Welcome back another episode. Don't forget to subscribe. Historical details were periodically discarded in favor of a more captivating and thrilling story, as many of the main characters from the hunt and capture of John Wilkes Booth moved into position for the conclusion of the chase in Manhunt Episode 5. Manhunt Episode 5 introduced a new antagonist in the form of President Andrew Johnson and his plans for Reconstruction, whereas Episode 4 concentrated on the plot underlying the killing. With regard to the last phases of the search for Booth, the drama on Apple TV Plus stayed relatively true to reality, notwithstanding a few minor discrepancies. No Confederate soldiers awaited John Wilkes Booth on his return home for the simple reason that no one is around to testify about what really happened on John Wilkes Booth's travels following the assassination of Lincoln. Many of the encounters he has in Manhunt are made up. This was seen in Manhunt Episode 5, when Booth pretended to be a Confederate soldier and was discovered lying to real Confederate soldiers who were attempting to return home after the Civil War's decisive battle. It's impossible to tell for sure whether this conversation took place, but if it did, it doesn't seem plausible that it played out the way Episode 5 depicts. Trapped in deception, Booth confessed to the weary and injured Confederate soldiers, obviously hoping to be welcomed as the hero he had always imagined himself to be. Quite the contrary occurred. Booth, having gained no real glory on the battlefield, was physically spat on for his cowardly murder and for passing for a soldier. This scene holds significance as it introduces Booth to the idea that even among his fellow fighters, he is not considered a hero but rather a vile villain. Mary Sims was never granted any land. In addition to being shown obtaining a land grant, Mary Sims is also seen starting to build a community and an improvised school on the property, which she thereafter opens to her neighbors. As Mary Sims' story in Manhunt differs from the real Mary Sims, it is actually meant to serve as a picture of how recently freed Black Americans were treated in the years following the Civil War. Therefore, it is not documented that Mary Sims was among the newly granted land citizens. Witness Mary Sims contested Mudd. Much later, Edwin Stanton and his crew discover the connection between Dr. Samuel Mudd and John Wilkes Booth in Manhunt Episode 5. This gets them to Mudd's doorway, where Mudd insists he had no idea who Booth was when he treated him, but Mary Sims shows Stanton where to find the evidence he needs to show Mudd is lying. As her torturer, Mudd, is being carried away, she also strongly accuses him of lying, bringing some justice to his persecution of both her and her brother. Stanton Edwin didn't follow Booth south on his own. A compelling aspect of Manhunt is the detective game between Booth and Edwin Stanton, which is akin to a cat-and-mouse game. The action moves outside of Booth's methodical trek towards a shattered Richmond, with Stanton scouting across the Northeast in quest of leads while thwarting the plans to unravel Lincoln's vision for the reunified United States. That, however, is just not true for history. Andrew Johnson invaded politics with far greater severity, to put it plainly. Andrew Johnson was appointed vice president in an effort to heal divisions between radical Republicans who backed Lincoln and those who sympathized with or served in the Confederacy. In actuality, he was the final American president to possess slaves. Contrary to historical accounts, Johnson is depicted in Manhunt as meeting with Confederate leaders and initially resisting their advances in support of the land concessions. Actually, Johnson's compassion for slave owners was evident everywhere he looked. Months later, Andrew Johnson reversed land grants. The sequence of events surrounding Andrew Johnson's revocation of land concessions did not correspond with historical reality, much like most of the events in Manhunt. Although the show did a good job of capturing the abrupt nature of the eviction, the real court case and order fulfillment took several months to complete. It is true that Edwin Stanton had severe asthma for a large portion of his life, and because there were few modern medical advancements throughout the 19th century, this condition seriously hindered his day-to-day activities. But unlike what his doctors suggested earlier in the episode, Stanton was not at the point of no return when he pursued Booth. Because of his asthma, Stanton passes out in Manhunt Episode 5 just as he and his crew manage to locate Booth. In actuality, Stanton did die from chronic asthma, but it was 4 years after Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth. For more videos, subscribe.